The old man was dripping rainwater onto the marble floor when the receptionist asked him for an insurance card. He stood just inside the emergency entrance of St. Augustine Medical Center, one hand braced against the front desk, his coat soaked through at the shoulders. Water gathered beneath his shoes. Across the lobby, a bronze sign read "Donor Reception." "Sir, I need your name and date of birth," the receptionist said, keeping her voice low, "and an insurance card if you have one." The man blinked as if the words had reached him from far away. Rain clung to his gray hair. His lips moved once before any sound came out. "East Intake," he said. The receptionist frowned. "This is emergency registration." "East Intake," he repeated. "I need." His hand slipped against the counter. Mara Ellis saw it from the medication room doorway. She was 12 hours into a night shift that was supposed to end at midnight. She saw what everyone else seemed determined not to see. An old man trying very hard not to fall. Then she moved. "Sir," Mara said, setting the folders down. "Can you hear me?" The receptionist looked relieved and annoyed at the same time. "Mara, he doesn't have ID. I told him we need information before we can take him back." Mara reached the man before his knees could buckle. His sleeve was wet and cold through her glove. "Information can wait," she said. "He needs to sit down." One of the guards stepped closer. His badge read Palmer. "We were told to keep the lobby clear. There's an event." "There's also a patient," Mara said. The receptionist lowered her voice. "He walked in with no wallet, no phone, no insurance." "Then we start with what we can do." Mara guided the old man into a chair near the wall, away from the opening doors. He kept one hand closed around his wrist, as if whatever he was holding mattered more than his own comfort. "I'm Mara," she said gently. "I'm a nurse." His eyes moved to her badge. "Nurse," he whispered. "That's right." Mara pulled a clean blanket from the warmer cabinet. The receptionist touched the headset at her ear. "Donna, I need you up front." Mara crouched in front of the old man and checked his wrist with practiced calm. She asked simple questions. Name, pain, whether he knew where he was. He answered only some of them, each word slow and careful. "St. Augustine," he murmured. "Yes," Mara said. "You're at St. Augustine." His eyes shifted toward the glass wall dividing emergency from the renovated VIP corridor. "They moved the desk," he said. Mara paused. "What desk?" Before he could answer, Donna, the night shift supervisor, appeared with a tablet tucked against her chest. "Mara," Donna said, "why is he under a hospital blanket?" "Because he's wet and shaking." "Has he been entered into the system?" "Not yet." "Then he is not cleared for treatment." Mara stood. The old man was sitting behind her now, and that changed the shape of the conversation. "He came to the emergency entrance asking for help," Mara said. "We assess first. Billing comes later." Donna glanced toward the west elevators. A small group had entered the lobby. Men in tailored coats, a woman with a pearl necklace, and Vivian Cole, St. Augustine's director of operations, immaculate in a cream blazer. Donna's jaw tightened. "Donors arrive in 20 minutes, she said. "Keep the lobby clean." That came directly from Miss Cole. The words hit Mara harder than they should have. Years ago, a clinic nurse had held her mother's chart and said, "We don't turn people away here." Mara had built her life around that sentence. She looked back at the old man. Rainwater had washed a thin line of mud across his wrist. As Mara adjusted the blanket, the object he had been holding slipped into view. It was an old hospital band, yellowed with age, the kind no one used anymore. The plastic had cracked at the edge, but the faded black letters were still readable beneath the lobby lights. Ward A, 1986. Mara stared at it just long enough for the receptionist to notice. "What is that?" the receptionist asked. The old man closed his fingers over the band again. "Old mistake," he said. His voice was quiet, but something in it did not fit the chair, the wet coat, or the way people were looking past him. Donna stepped closer. "Mara, this is your last warning. Move him out of the public lobby until we know what we're dealing with. Then give me an exam room." "That's not what I meant." "I know." The donors were near enough now that their conversation softened. Vivian's eyes passed over the front desk, then stopped on the blanket around the old man's shoulders. "Is there a problem here?" Vivian asked. No one answered quickly enough. The receptionist looked down at her screen. Palmer stepped back half a pace. Donna held her tablet flat against her blazer. Mara kept her voice steady. "This man came in through emergency. He needs to be assessed." Vivian smiled for the donors first. Of course, patient care is always our priority. Then she moved close enough that only Mara, Donna, and the old man could hear the rest. "But judgment is also part of care, Nurse Ellis. You don't turn the front entrance into a scene because you feel sorry for someone." Mara looked at the old man's hand closed around the faded band. "I didn't feel sorry for him," she said. "I believed him." Something in the old man's eyes changed, as if Mara had answered a question he had never asked out loud. Behind Vivian, one donor whispered to another. Above the registration desk, a security camera blinked red. Vivian looked from the wet floor to Mara's badge. "You just embarrassed this hospital," she said, her voice soft and cold, "in front of the wrong people." They moved the old man out of the front lobby only after Vivian Cole told the donors, with a smile polished enough for a brochure, that St. Augustine never compromised patient dignity. No one missed what she did not say. Mara helped roll the chair through a side corridor toward a temporary observation bay near triage. Palmer walked ahead as if escorting a problem instead of a person. Donna followed, already typing. The old man kept the blanket around his shoulders. His eyes moved slowly along the walls, past the framed awards and the new gold lettering outside the VIP elevators. He looked tired, but not lost. That bothered Mara more than confusion would have. "He's still with me?" she asked. He looked at her badge again. "Mara. That's me." "Good hands," he said. It was barely more than a whisper, but Nurse Angela Reed heard it from the supply cart. Angela had worked nights at St. Augustine longer than most people had worked anywhere. Her hair was silver at the temples, and she had a way of watching a hallway that made new nurses stand straighter. She took one look at the old hospital band half hidden under the blanket and looked away too fast. Mara noticed. Before she could ask, Vivian's voice came from behind them. "Nurse Ellis, my office." Mara glanced at the old man. "Angela, can you stay with him for a minute?" Angela nodded. "I've got him." Vivian did not wait. She turned toward the administrative corridor, where the carpet began and the smell of antiseptic gave way to lemon polish. Mara followed her into an office that seemed designed to see everything without touching any of it. From up there, the lobby looked clean again. The wet mark on the marble had been mopped. The donors were being guided toward the west elevators. Vivian closed the door. "Do you understand what just happened downstairs?" she asked. "A patient came in needing assessment." An unverified walk-in disrupted the front entrance during a donor reception. Mara kept her hands at her sides. "He came through emergency. He came through the most visible doors in the building with no ID, no insurance, and no intake history." Vivian's tone stayed calm. "This is a private hospital, Nurse Ellis. We operate under standards. Clinical standards should come first." Clinical judgment includes knowing when a patient belongs in another facility. Mara looked through the glass at the lobby below. A donor laughed at something Donna said. The sound did not reach the office. He was wet, weak, and asking for help, Mara said. I couldn't send him back outside. No one asked you to send him into the street. They asked me to move him out before the donors came. Vivian's eyes sharpened, just a little. Those donors fund beds, equipment, charity adjustments, staffing. The hospital does not run on sentiment. Neither does emergency care. For the first time, Vivian's expression lost its smoothness. Not anger exactly, disappointment shaped into authority. You have a good heart, she said. That is not the same thing as good judgment. Mara felt the sentence land where Vivian meant it to land. On her badge, her paycheck, her overdue rent. She needed this job. Vivian knew it. I followed what I believed was safe, Mara said. You bypassed intake protocol. I kept him warm and checked whether he could wait. You created a scene. Mara looked at her then. No. The scene was everyone stepping around him. Vivian held her gaze for a long second. Downstairs, a security camera blinked above the front desk. One more incident like this, Vivian said, and you will not be on my night rotation. Do you understand? Mara's throat tightened. She thought of her mother in that old clinic, of the nurse who had not asked first whether compassion fit the budget. I understand what you're saying, she answered. Good. Vivian opened the office door, but she was not finished. Until I review the report, that patient stays in temporary observation only. No unnecessary escalation, no dramatic language in the chart, no personal crusade. St. Augustine has a reputation because we control our process. Mara stepped into the hallway. Patients are not a process. Vivian's smile returned, thin and professional. That kind of line sounds noble, until it costs someone else a contract. By the time Mara returned to the observation bay, Angela was standing very still beside the bed. The old man had woken more fully. His fingers were curled around the faded band at his wrist. Ward A, he murmured. Angela's hand stopped on the bed rail. Mara saw it. Angela? Angela did not answer right away. She looked at the old man as if a locked drawer had opened in her memory. Where did you hear that? Angela asked him. The old man turned his head a little. It used to be warmer there. Mara waited for Angela to explain, but Angela swallowed the words before they reached her mouth. Old name, she said finally. Before your time. For what? Angela shook her head. Not now. Donna appeared at the doorway with her tablet. Mara, Vivian wants your statement before end of shift. Keep it factual, no assumptions. I always do. Donna's face softened for half a second, almost against her will. Then be careful which facts you write down. She left before Mara could ask what that meant. Across the hospital, 2 floors above the lobby, Theo Grant sat alone in the IT office with a half-eaten sandwich beside his keyboard. He was 26, new enough to still say yes too quickly. An internal request appeared on his screen from operations. Restrict chart access. M. Ellis. Temporary review hold. Note, bypassed intake protocol. Theo read the line twice. He knew Mara only by sight. She was the nurse who thanked housekeeping by name and never yelled when a printer jammed. He hovered over the approval button, then looked at the attached note again. Bypassed intake protocol. Downstairs, Vivian Cole was already walking back toward the donors, her smile reset, her blazer spotless. Theo clicked open the access panel. By the next night shift, Mara could feel the story moving through St. Augustine faster than she could walk. It was in the way two residents stopped talking when she stepped into the medication room. It was in the way the receptionist from the night before kept her eyes fixed on the screen. By 9 o'clock, the story had a shape. Mara had ignored protocol. Mara had made a scene. Mara had dragged an uninsured walk-in into a donor reception because she wanted to look like a hero. No one said it to her face. That was worse. Donna found her near triage with a stack of clean gowns in her arms. "You're being reassigned for the rest of the shift," Donna said. Mara looked toward the emergency board. "We're short 2 nurses." "I know." "Then where am I going?" Donna's mouth tightened. "Supply rotation. Restock rooms, clear old discharge packets, help transport when called." Mara stared at her. "Because of last night?" "Because Vivian wants calm in the department." "Calm for who?" Donna glanced toward the nurses' station, where 3 people suddenly became interested in their monitors. "Mara, don't make me say things in this hallway." So Mara didn't. She took the supply cart and pushed it past the work she had trained for and loved, while other nurses moved around her with the careful distance people kept from trouble. In temporary observation, the old man was awake. He sat propped against 2 pillows, his faded hospital band hidden beneath one hand. He looked better than he had in the lobby, but his eyes carried an exhaustion sleep did not fix. Angela Reed was changing a water cup on the side table. "How is he?" Mara asked. Angela looked toward the doorway before answering. "Stable enough to complain about the lights." The old man lifted his eyes. "They used to be softer." Mara moved closer. "You remember the lights?" He studied the ceiling, then the new blue and gold St. Augustine logo on the wall. "I remember a sign." Angela's fingers tightened around the cup. "What sign?" Mara asked. The old man turned his face toward the corridor. His voice was rough, but clear enough now. "Where did the old sign go?" Angela set the cup down too carefully. Before Mara could ask anything else, a sharp voice cut through from the hallway. "Excuse me, is that the man from the lobby?" A woman in a cashmere coat stood outside the observation bay, one hand on the arm of an older man in a private room wristband. A volunteer hovered behind them with a wheelchair. "Ma'am, this is a patient care area," Angela said. "I understand that," the woman replied, though her eyes stayed on Mara. "But my father was promised a private transfer route. We should not have to pass people sleeping in intake corridors." The old man lowered his gaze to his hands. Mara felt heat rise behind her ribs. She kept her voice even. "He's not sleeping in a corridor. He's under observation." The woman looked at Mara's badge. Recognition clicked. "You're the nurse from last night." The volunteer stopped moving. Angela stepped in. "Let's keep walking." But the woman had already pulled out her phone. "I donate to this hospital every year. My family pays for privacy. If St. Augustine is changing its standards, someone should tell us before we renew." Mara could have said a dozen things. That an old man in a blanket was not a threat. That privacy was not the same as pretending suffering did not exist. Instead, she looked at the old man. He was watching her, not the woman. So Mara said only, "I'll call someone to escort you through another hall." The woman gave a tight nod, as if Mara had confirmed every suspicion she already had. 20 minutes later, Vivian Cole had the complaint on her desk. Mara knew because Donna brought her into the glass office without meeting her eyes. The page sat between Vivian's hands, one paragraph highlighted in yellow. A VIP family felt unsafe and uncomfortable, Vivian said. They passed an observation bay. They passed a preventable reputational issue. Mara breathed in slowly. He is a patient. He is an unverified patient whose presence is now generating written complaints from supporters of this hospital. One supporter. One is enough when it is the right one. Vivian turned the page so Mara could see the highlighted line. Staff member involved appeared dismissive of donor concerns. Mara read it twice. The words felt clean in the way a knife could look clean. I wasn't dismissive, she said. I offered another route. After creating the condition that required one. I didn't put his bed there. No, Vivian said. You put him in motion. You created an exception. And exceptions become patterns when emotional employees are allowed to confuse compassion with policy. Mara looked through the glass wall. Down in the emergency lobby, everything looked orderly from above. It always did, if you stood far enough away. What do you want me to write? Mara asked. Vivian's expression softened, which made Mara trust it less. The truth, that you bypassed intake protocol, initiated contact before verification, and failed to consider the operational impact during a donor event. That is not the whole truth. It is the relevant truth. Mara felt fear then, real and practical. Rent fear, job fear, the kind that made good people swallow words. But she also remembered the old man asking about a sign no one wanted to explain. I'll write what happened, she said. Vivian tapped the complaint with one neat fingernail. Then understand that what happens next will also be documented. Late that night, Theo Grant received the first draft of Vivian's disciplinary report. His task was simple: attach the lobby camera reference and mark the file for administrative review. He opened the report, then opened the camera index. The report said Mara began patient contact after the donor group entered the lobby. The camera timestamp said otherwise. Theo leaned closer to the screen. For several seconds, he did not move. The meeting was called a protocol review, but Mara knew what it was the moment she saw the chairs. There were 3 of them on one side of the conference table and 1 on the other. Vivian Cole sat beneath the glass wall that looked down over the emergency lobby. Donna sat to her right with a folder closed in front of her. A man from Human Resources, whose name Mara had only seen in policy emails, clicked a pen without looking up. The empty chair was for Mara. Please sit, Vivian said. Mara sat. On the table lay a printed report with her name at the top. M. Ellis. Night shift. Intake deviation. The words looked official enough to make her stomach tighten. Vivian folded her hands. This is an internal review of the incident involving the unidentified patient brought in during last night's donor reception. He wasn't an incident, Mara said before she could stop herself. The HR man finally looked up. Vivian's expression did not change. This is exactly why we are here. Donna kept her eyes on the folder. Vivian slid the report across the table. According to the timeline, you initiated care before registration, moved the patient into a clinical area without clearance, and failed to notify supervision until after the disruption reached the public lobby. Mara read the first paragraph, then the second. Something was missing. Not a small wording choice, not a tone issue. A whole piece of the truth had been cut out, cleanly. Where is the note about how he arrived? She asked. Vivian tilted her head. Which note? The front desk call. The fact that he was wet, disoriented, and having trouble standing. The reason I checked him in the first place. The report includes your statement that you believed assessment was necessary. That is not the same thing. It is the part relevant to your decision. Mara looked at Donna. You saw him. Donna's face changed just enough to hurt. I saw part of it. You told me he wasn't cleared for treatment. Because he wasn't. And I told you we assess first. Vivian tapped the report with one finger. You are not authorized to rewrite hospital intake policy according to personal conviction. I didn't rewrite policy. I treated a person like a patient. The HR man cleared his throat. Nurse Ellis, the concern here is liability. There it was. Not patient, not man, not human being. Liability. Mara felt the words settle over the table. If liability is the concern, she said carefully, then the report should include the full condition he was in when he came through the doors. Vivian's voice softened. Mara, you keep reaching for the emotional version of this. No, I'm reaching for the complete one. For the first time, Donna looked at her. The look was brief, almost hidden, but Mara saw fear inside it. Vivian closed the report. Until this review is complete, you are suspended from patient-facing duties. Mara went still. Suspended? Temporary administrative suspension, the HR man said. His voice had the careful flatness of someone reading from a page. Your badge access will be limited. You will remain available for follow-up questions. For helping him sit down? For bypassing protocol during a high-visibility event, Vivian said. Mara looked through the glass wall at the emergency lobby below. People moved across the marble floor in clean lines. A woman at reception smiled into a headset. A man in a suit checked his watch beside the elevators. Everything looked calm. That was the ugliest part. What happens to him? Mara asked. That patient is being monitored, Vivian said. By who? By qualified staff. Angela? Vivian's eyes cooled. You are no longer in a position to manage his care. The meeting ended with a packet of paperwork and a sentence Mara barely heard about process integrity. She walked out, carrying the report in one hand and her badge in the other, because the HR man had asked her to surrender it for reprogramming. At the end of the hall, she stopped near the observation bay. The old man was awake. Through the open doorway, Mara saw him turn his head toward her, as if he had known she was there. Angela stood beside his bed, adjusting the blanket. Mara tried to smile. It did not reach very far. I may not be back for a while, she said. Angela looked at the badge in Mara's hand and understood too much. The old man studied Mara's face. They sent you away. Temporarily. That's what people call it when they don't want to say what they did. Mara almost laughed, but it caught in her throat. You'll be okay, she said. Angela's good. So are you. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the phone at Angela's station rang, and Mara had to leave before someone came to escort her out. 2 floors above, Theo Grant sat in the IT office, staring at the same report Mara had just held in her hands. Vivian had called him directly this time. The file needs to match the official timeline, she had said. She had not raised her voice. She had not explained how. She had simply said it as if the system were a hallway, and Theo only had to close one door. Now the report window was open beside the camera index. Theo could see the mismatch. He could see the moment Mara reached the old man before the donor group entered the lobby. He could see the later note that made it sound as if she had acted after the scene had already begun. His cursor hovered over the administrative field. He thought of Vivian's voice. Official timeline. He thought of Mara thanking him once for fixing a broken scanner at 3 in the morning. Theo did what he had been told to do. But not only that. Before he confirmed the update, he made sure the system record trail would still show what had changed. He sat back, heart beating too fast for such a small movement. The screen accepted the change. Downstairs, Mara's badge gave one short red flash at the staff exit. For a second, she just stood there with the door half open and the July night pressing warm and heavy on the other side. Then Palmer, the security guard, looked away, as if giving her privacy was the only kindness he had left. Mara stepped out. Behind her, in temporary observation, the old man watched the door close. Angela was quiet beside him. After a long moment, he turned his face toward her. "Find Dr. Ortiz," he said. Mara sat at her kitchen table with her badge beside a glass of tap water, staring at the red sticker Human Resources had placed across the back of it. Inactive, pending review. The words looked smaller than they felt. Her apartment was quiet, except for the refrigerator clicking on and the traffic passing 3 floors below. She had changed out of her scrubs, but she still felt the hospital on her skin. The dry air, the floor polish, the cold weight of Vivian's voice. For the first time since nursing school, Mara wondered if doing the right thing could still ruin a person. Her phone buzzed. Angela Reed. Mara answered before the second ring. "Is he okay?" Angela did not ask who she meant. "He's stable, resting on and off." Mara closed her eyes. Thank God. "He asked for Dr. Ortiz." Mara sat straighter. "Who's Dr. Ortiz?" "Samuel Ortiz. Retired from full-time practice, still consults here twice a month. He was at St. Augustine before the renovations, before the West Pavilion, before half these executives knew what compliance meant. Why would the patient know him?" There was a pause. "That's what I'm trying to find out," Angela said. At St. Augustine, Angela found Dr. Ortiz in a small physician lounge near radiology, reading a chart with his glasses low on his nose. He was in his 70s, broad-shouldered still, with a calm face and the tired patience of someone who had watched institutions forget their own promises. "Samuel," Angela said, "I need you to see someone." He looked up. "This about the nurse they suspended?" "It's about the patient." That made him close the chart. In temporary observation, the old man was awake, his hands folded over the blanket. He looked at Dr. Ortiz for a long moment, and something like humor touched his tired face. "Sam," he said. Dr. Ortiz stopped at the foot of the bed. Angela heard his breath catch. "Do I know you?" Ortiz asked. The old man did not answer. His fingers moved to the faded band at his wrist. Dr. Ortiz stepped closer. "May I?" The old man let him turn the band gently toward the light. Ward A, 1986. All the color seemed to leave Ortiz's face. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "East Intake," the old man said, "before they made everything shine." Angela felt the hair rise along her arms. Ortiz looked from the band to the man's face, then back again. He did not say the thought forming behind his eyes. "Angela," he said quietly, "take me to the old records room." The records room was in the basement, behind a door most employees passed without noticing. The keypad still worked, though it took Angela 2 tries because the buttons stuck. Inside, the air smelled of cardboard, dust, and old carpet glue. Metal shelves held banker boxes with dates written in black marker. Some had not been touched in years. "What are we looking for?" Angela asked. "Anything marked Ward A," Ortiz said. "You remember it?" Ortiz pulled a box from a lower shelf and winced at the dust. I remember what it was supposed to be. They worked in silence at first. Angela opened old staffing binders. Ortiz checked archive labels. Somewhere above them, the hospital continued running as if the basement did not exist. On the third shelf, Angela found a flat wooden sign wrapped in brittle brown paper. She carried it to the table and peeled the paper back. Ward Care Fund. East Intake Clinic. No patient turned away. The letters were faded, but not gone. Angela touched the edge of the sign with 2 fingers. I remember seeing this when I was new. I thought they threw it out. They almost did, Ortiz said. His voice had changed. It was no longer only professional. It sounded personal. He opened another box and found a folder labeled 1986, East Intake Opening. Inside were photographs, clipped newspaper pieces, donor letters, and a folded copy of an old floor plan. The plan showed a wing that no longer existed under that name. Angela lifted the first photograph. It showed a much younger driver. Ortiz standing beside a tall, dark-haired doctor in a white coat, both of them holding one end of a ribbon outside a plain set of clinic doors. The corner of the photo had torn away, but the face of the second doctor remained clear. Angela looked at the photograph. Then she looked at Ortiz. Samuel. Ortiz did not take the picture from her. He only stared. The man in the photograph was younger by decades, stronger, his face unlined, his eyes sharper. But the shape of the brow was the same. The set of the mouth was the same. Even the way he held one hand close to his wrist looked familiar enough to make Angela's chest tighten. On the back, in blue ink, someone had written Dr. Elias Ward and Dr. Samuel Ortiz, Ward A opening, 1986. Angela whispered, "Is that him?" Ortiz took off his glasses and rubbed one hand over his eyes. "I don't know," he said. But he said it like a man afraid the answer had already stepped into the room. Upstairs, Vivian Cole was preparing for a board review at 9 the next morning. Through the glass wall of her office, Donna watched Vivian arrange a printed packet into clean stacks. Mara Ellis was on the front page. The complaint was on the second. The revised timeline was on the third. "We close this tomorrow," Vivian said. "No more hallway drama. No more sentimental exceptions." Donna nodded, though her eyes went to the basement stairwell. In the records room, Ortiz slid the photograph into the folder and gathered the floor plan under his arm. "Call Mara," he said. Angela looked up. "She's suspended." "Then call her as a person, not as an employee." "What do I tell her?" Ortiz looked at the old sign, then at the torn photograph on the table. "Tell her she needs to be here before the board meets." Angela took out her phone, but it lit before she could dial. A text from Theo Grant appeared on the screen. I found the edit log. It wasn't Mara. At 9 in the morning, Mara Ellis walked back into St. Augustine without a working badge. Angela met her at the side entrance and opened the staff door from the inside. Mara carried nothing but her phone and the folded suspension notice. For the first time since nursing school, entering a hospital made her feel like she was trespassing. "Ortiz is already upstairs," Angela said. "What is this meeting?" "Vivian thinks it's the end of the story." Mara looked at her. "And you?" Angela's mouth tightened. "I think she picked the wrong story." The boardroom sat on the top floor, behind double doors and framed donor plaques. Chairwoman Helen Brooks sat at the head of the table, silver-haired and unreadable. Vivian stood near a screen with a packet in her hands. Donna sat against the wall, pale and quiet. When Mara entered, Vivian did not look surprised. She looked inconvenienced. "Nurse Ellis is currently under administrative review," Vivian said. "I'm not sure why she has been brought into a board-level discussion." Helen Brooks looked at Angela. "Because Nurse Reed requested a delay before any personnel decision was finalized." "On what grounds?" Vivian asked. The door opened again before Angela could answer. Dr. Samuel Ortiz stepped in, carrying an old folder, a rolled floor plan, and the faded wooden sign from the basement. Theo Grant followed with a laptop under one arm. Vivian's face hardened. "This is highly irregular." "So is burying half a hospital's history in a basement," Ortiz said. Helen Brooks lifted one hand. "Everyone sit down." Vivian recovered first. She placed her packet on the table and began with the voice she used for donors. "The issue before us is straightforward. Nurse Ellis bypassed intake protocol, initiated contact with an unverified patient, and created a disruption during a major donor event. This hospital cannot survive on sentiment. Standards protect patients, staff, and the institution." Mara sat very still while the words arranged themselves around her like a locked room. Helen turned a page. "Nurse Ellis, did you initiate contact before registration?" "Yes," Mara said, "because he was losing his balance at the front desk." Vivian cut in. "That is her interpretation." "It is also visible on camera," Theo said. Every face turned toward him. Theo swallowed. Yes, there is lobby footage." Vivian's smile thinned. "Mr. Grant was asked to attach routine references, not editorialize." "Then let him attach them out loud," Helen said. Theo connected his laptop to the screen with hands that shook only once. The first video filled the wall. There was no sound at first, only the emergency lobby from above. The old man at the desk, the receptionist leaning back, Palmer stepping closer, Mara coming from the medication room doorway before the donor group had entered the frame. Theo paused the image. "This is the timestamp in the original camera file," he said. "Mara reached him before the donor party arrived." Vivian looked at the screen. "That does not change the breach." "It changes the report," Theo said. He opened a second window, careful not to explain the system beyond what mattered. The first note said the patient arrived wet, unstable, and unable to complete intake. After Nurse Ellis was suspended, the timeline was revised. The later version removed that context. Helen Brooks looked down at the packet in front of her. "Who revised it?" Theo's eyes flicked once toward Vivian. "Operations account." Pens stopped moving. Donna closed her eyes. Vivian spoke slowly. "Administrative cleanup is not falsification." Angela stood. "It is when the cleanup removes why the nurse acted." Helen turned to her. "Nurse Reed." Angela placed both hands on an empty chair. "I was on shift. I heard Donna repeat the instruction that came from Miss Cole. Donors were arriving. Keep the lobby clean. I saw the patient after Mara got him seated. I saw the band on his wrist. And I heard him ask for Ward A." One board member frowned. "Ward A?" Ortiz set the wooden sign on the table. "Ward Care Fund, East Intake Clinic. No patient turned away." The old letters looked almost fragile under the boardroom lights. Helen Brooks leaned forward. "Where did this come from?" "Basement records," Ortiz said. "It used to hang near the emergency entrance before the hospital remodeled." He opened the folder and spread out the photographs, the floor plan, and the old fund documents. The care of his hands made the room pay attention. Ward A was not a branding detail, he said. It was the original free care intake wing, built so people without insurance would not be turned away because they were poor, unidentified, or inconvenient. Vivian gave a short, controlled breath. With respect, Dr. Ortiz, old charity materials do not resolve a modern compliance incident. Helen lifted one photograph. It showed Ortiz as a younger man, beside the tall doctor in a white coat. Why was this fund buried? She asked. Ortiz kept his eyes on the documents. Vivian kept hers on the table. Ortiz placed one final document on the table. Because over time, the people responsible for remembering it found it easier not to. Theo played the next clip. This one had audio. The board heard Donna say donors were arriving. They heard Vivian tell Mara she had embarrassed the hospital in front of the wrong people. Then the hallway camera showed the patient being kept away from the public lobby, while the donor reception continued behind polished glass. Mara stared at her own image on the screen. She had thought seeing it would make her feel vindicated. Instead, it made her sad. The old man on the video looked smaller than she remembered. Helen Brooks closed the packet Vivian had prepared. "Bring him in." Vivian turned sharply. "Chairwoman, I strongly object to placing an unidentified patient in the center of a governance matter." "He has been in the center from the beginning," Helen said. Angela returned with a wheelchair. The old man sat wrapped in a clean hospital blanket, his faded band visible at his wrist. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear. Ortiz stood beside him like a man standing beside history and not quite trusting his own memory. Helen's voice softened. "Sir, do you know why you are here?" The old man looked at Mara first. Then he looked at the sign on the table. "Because someone finally found the door again," he said. Vivian's face had gone pale. "This hospital cannot base decisions on old paperwork and a confused patient." The old man turned toward her. He did not raise his voice. "My mind is tired," he said. "It is not gone." He lifted his wrist, and the old band caught the light. "My name is Elias Ward." Dr. Ortiz bowed his head. Helen Brooks did not move. The old man's eyes traveled around the boardroom, past the packets, the plaques, the clean glass wall, and back to Vivian. "I built this hospital for the people you turned away." Vivian's face drained, but she still reached for the packet in front of her. "Chairwoman," she said, "this board cannot rely on a sentimental old document." For a moment after Vivian spoke, no one in the boardroom moved. The sentence hung between the old wooden sign and the polished table, between the man in the wheelchair and the woman still clutching her packet, as if paper could hold back what the room had just heard. Helen Brooks looked at Vivian. "You are calling the founding documents of this hospital sentimental?" Vivian straightened. The color had not returned to her face, but her voice found its familiar shape. "I am saying this hospital exists in a different world now. Regulations, insurance contracts, donor expectations, liability exposure. We cannot operate a modern medical center on memories." Dr. Ward's hand rested over the faded band at his wrist. He did not interrupt. That made Vivian keep talking. "With respect to Dr. Ward and whatever this institution began as, St. Augustine survived because we adapted. The West Pavilion, the executive care suites, the donor network, those are not vanity projects. They fund the building. They keep departments open." "And the emergency entrance?" Helen asked. Vivian glanced at Mara.
The emergency entrance cannot become a magnet for every unverified case in the city. Mara felt the words strike the table harder than any accusation against her had. Angela's chin lifted. He was not a case. You know what I mean. Yes, Angela said. That's the problem. Vivian turned to the board. If we lose donor confidence, we lose programs. We lose equipment. We lose staff. Without wealthy donors, there is no hospital. Dr. Ortiz looked down at the Ward Care Fund sign. There used to be a hospital before the wealthy donors had a private elevator.
A board member near the windows shifted in his seat. Another closed Vivian's packet and pushed it away. Helen turned to Theo. Mr. Grant, you said there was more than one version of the record. Theo nodded, opened a file, and kept his explanation plain. The system shows the original entry, the later revision, and the account used to approve the change. The edit removed the patient's condition on arrival and changed the sequence of events. Vivian cut in. It clarified the timeline. It changed it, Theo said. His voice shook on the first word and steadied on the second. Helen asked, was Nurse Ellis involved in that change? No. Was her access already restricted? Yes. The answer was small. Its effect was not. Mara looked at the table, because if she looked at Theo too long, she might cry, and she did not want Vivian to mistake tears for weakness. Angela stepped forward. This wasn't only Mara. Vivian's eyes flashed. Be careful, Nurse Reed. I have been careful for too long. Angela looked at Helen. There were other nights when we were told to keep certain patients out of sight until transfers could be arranged. Not all of them. Not written as a rule, just little instructions. Keep the front clear. Route them away from donor traffic. Don't escalate unless they were already in the system. Donna made a soft sound from the wall. Helen turned to her. Is that true? Donna's fingers tightened around the folder in her lap. I repeated what I was told. By whom? Donna looked at Vivian. Vivian's face hardened. This is becoming a character trial. No, Helen said. It is becoming a pattern. Vivian placed both hands on the table. For the first time, her polish cracked enough for the fear underneath to show. You all enjoy judging the person who keeps this place financially alive. But when a story breaks, when donors pull pledges, when the executive wing loses contracts, none of you will be downstairs explaining why the lobby was full of reputational risk. The words landed exactly where she had not meant them to. Reputational risk. Dr. Ward closed his eyes. Mara saw Helen hear it. She saw the board hear it. She saw Vivian realize, 1 second too late, that she had finally said the quiet part in a room where someone was writing it down. Helen's voice changed. It became lower, not louder. The patient you tried to remove from public view is the man who built this hospital. The nurse you suspended followed the mission your office buried. The employee you pressured preserved the record your report tried to overwrite. And your concern is still the lobby? Vivian did not answer. Helen stood. Effective immediately, Vivian Cole is suspended from operational authority pending external review. Her access to patient records, staffing directives, donor communications related to this incident, and emergency intake policy is revoked. Vivian stared at her. You cannot run this hospital on moral theater. No, Helen said. We are going to find out how long it has been run without moral responsibility. She turned to Theo. Preserve every version of the file. Theo nodded. Dr. Ortiz,
Nurse Reed, I want the Ward Care Fund records reopened today. Not summarized, reopened. I want every policy change tied to the Old East intake reviewed. Ortiz touched the edge of the faded sign. Yes, Chairwoman. Helen looked at Donna. And I want a list of emergency cases redirected or delayed under informal instructions. No graphic summaries. Dates, decisions, supervisors. Donna's eyes filled, but she nodded. I'll provide what I know. Only then did Helen turn to Mara. Nurse Ellis, your suspension is lifted pending formal correction of the record. I would like you back on staff. The words should have felt like relief. They did, partly. But Mara looked at the old man in the wheelchair, at the sign that had been hidden in dust, at Angela, standing with her shoulders squared after years of swallowing warnings.
Thank you, Mara said. But what changes for the next patient? Helen lowered her eyes to the Ward Care Fund sign. A board member set his pen down. Dr. Ward looked from Mara to Helen Brooks, then to every board member at the table. He waited for their answer. 3 weeks after the board meeting, the emergency entrance of St. Augustine sounded different. It was not louder. The same phones rang at the front desk. The same wheels clicked over the same polished floor. The same elevator doors opened and closed beside the West Pavilion. But something in the rhythm had changed, as if the building had been holding its breath for years and had finally remembered how to let it out. Vivian Cole's name came off the operations directory on a Monday morning. No announcement was made in the lobby. No one gathered to watch. A facilities worker simply removed the brass plate from beside the glass office, and for a moment, the wall underneath looked paler than the rest, a clean rectangle where power had been. The investigation continued behind closed doors. Helen Brooks kept her promise. The informal instructions, the quiet diversions, the cases redirected away from donor traffic, all of it was pulled from emails, shift notes, call logs, and the memories of people who had been afraid to say too much while Vivian was still in charge. Donna gave her statement. So did Angela. So did Theo. Mara did not enjoy any of it. She had thought vindication would feel brighter. Instead, it felt heavy and necessary, like carrying water to a fire already put out and realizing the smoke was still in the walls. On her first week back, Helen asked Mara to join the new Emergency Ethics Review Group. Mara almost said no. The title sounded too large for a nurse who still double-checked her bank account before buying groceries. I'm not an administrator, Mara said. Helen looked at her across the same boardroom table where Vivian had tried to end her career. That's why I asked. The group met twice that week. Not for speeches, not for photographs. They rewrote the intake escalation policy in plain language. They added a direct review line for uninsured patients who arrived through emergency. They required that no one could be moved out of public view for donor comfort. They reopened the Ward Care Fund with a small starting balance from the board, a larger one from Dr. Ward, and a promise that the numbers would be public every quarter. Dr. Ward refused to let anyone name the fund after him again. It already has a name, he said. He was still recovering, slowly and stubbornly. Some days he walked with help. Some days he used the wheelchair without pretending he did not need it. He spent most afternoons in a quiet room near the Old East Corridor, reading through the files Ortiz brought him and asking questions that made department heads sit up straighter. He never gave a grand speech. That disappointed the communications team. It relieved Mara. One Friday, Angela found Mara outside the old records room, holding the wooden sign from the basement. It had been cleaned, but not made new. The faded letters remained faded. The scratches stayed. Someone had sealed the wood so it would not break apart, but no one had tried to make it look untouched by time.
Ward Care Fund, East Intake Clinic. No patient turned away. Angela stood beside her. "You okay?" Mara ran her thumb along the edge of the frame. "I keep thinking about how long it was down there." "Me too." "And how many of us walked past that basement door." Angela did not defend herself. That was one of the things Mara loved about her. "We know where it is now," Angela said. Later that afternoon, Dr. Ward asked to see the emergency entrance. Ortiz pushed the wheelchair. Angela walked on one side. Mara walked on the other.
Staff slowed as they passed, not because anyone had told them to, but because people knew when a place was changing and wanted to see whether it was real. The old sign was not returned to the lobby wall. Dr. Ward asked for it to hang inside the staff entrance, where nurses, doctors, receptionists, security guards, and administrators would see it before they saw anyone else. "Memory belongs where decisions are made," he said. At the public emergency doors, a new sign had been mounted in dark letters against a clear panel. No patient turned away. It was simple enough that no one could hide inside it. Mara looked at it for a long time. She thought of her mother in the county clinic. She thought of herself at 12 hours into a shift, holding cold coffee and watching an old man slip against the front desk. She thought of Vivian's voice saying, "Wrong people," and of Theo's message saying it wasn't Mara, and of Angela finally saying she had been careful for too long. Dr. Ward looked up at the sign, but said nothing. Mara expected him to seem satisfied. Instead, he looked almost sad. "Is it enough?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. The answer did not hurt as much as she expected. He turned his head toward her. "But it is a door. Doors matter." The automatic doors opened. A woman stepped inside with a man leaning against her shoulder. He was younger than Mara expected, maybe 30, with a work jacket zipped wrong and fear held tightly in his face. The woman went straight to the desk and spoke before the receptionist could ask. "He doesn't have insurance," she said. "We don't know where else to go." For 1 second, the lobby seemed to remember its old reflex. Then the new receptionist stood. "You're in the right place," she said. Mara felt something loosen in her chest. She walked to the desk, not because anyone had called for her, and not because she wanted anyone to see. She walked because a patient had come through the door. "I'm Mara," she said, taking a clean blanket from the warmer. "We're going to help him sit down." The woman looked up at the sign, then back at Mara, as if she did not quite trust relief yet. Mara understood that. She opened the intake door herself. Behind her, the words above the entrance held steady in the afternoon light. No patient turned away. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. And if you believe every person deserves dignity, no matter how they look, like this video, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs the reminder. This is an original fictional story created for entertainment and moral reflection. Any resemblance to real people, companies, institutions, or events is purely coincidental.